Okay, good morning, everybody. Welcome to the Naples Mac User Group Wednesday meeting, September 30th. We welcome you. We certainly welcome all of our members from all over the United States and from all over the world. We have some folks here probably from London and from London, England, and Australia, and from various places in the US. Our meetings will continue each and every Wednesday until the 30th of June in 2021. Same time, same station. You must be a member of Naples MUG to attend our Zoom meetings. But if we ever resume meetings in the library in Naples, those meetings will always be open to the public. I'd like to congratulations to our 45 new members. We found out we had a duplicate for taking advantage of our special membership promotion, which will continue through November 1st. We have 5 more to go. The goal is 50. So make sure if you have anybody that's in need of any Apple assistance or help or anything, try to get them into this last 4 slots. I have announced the classes and sent out notices for 2021. Registration for the classes will start November 1st, 2020. All classes this year will be on Zoom. And here's a list of the classes. I will be sending out a video of the meeting within the next 2 to 3 days, and you'll have the attachment of the class notes of exactly what the classes are. Okay, now we have a little business we need to take care of this morning, which is on our calendar every year at this time. We need to pick 3 members for our nominating committee. Three of our board spots are up for re-election. Myself, Jeff Bohr, and Marilyn. Marilyn has found it necessary to resign from the board for personal reasons. So we will be looking for 1 additional board member. If any one of our members is interested in being a board member, please contact someone on the board and let us know. We'd appreciate it. We always need help. And even if you just want to be a helper and help out with the running of the group, please notify one of our board members, including myself. The 2 vacancies that were caused last year by John Lane and Conrad Reback retiring from the board have been replaced temporarily with Ed Evans and Mary Condon. Ed and Mary's names will have to be on the ballot for January at the annual meeting. Okay, the process is that I have picked already 1 member. I get to pick 1 member, which is Bill Nice, who will be heading up the nominating committee. The Naples board will pick 1 member from our membership, and somebody will be in touch with our members to figure out who that individual should be. And then we need today for 1 volunteer from the members that are here today for the meeting. And so if we could have more than 1 can volunteer, but if we could have anybody that would like to volunteer to turn off their mic and announce their name, we'd appreciate it. Do we have any volunteers?
Scott Silver will volunteer.
Okay, thank you very much, Scott Silver. Now we have to vote for Scott Silver. Maybe you can turn on everybody's volume for a second, Eckert. All those that agree with the nomination of Scott Silver for the nominating committee, say yay.
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 Now this is usually, are there any nays? Any nays? So by a unanimous vote, Congratulations, Scott Silver, and we thank you very much for volunteering.
You're very welcome. I'm honored.
Thank you. Okay, the meeting next week, Marty Doria will be back with us. It will be a Q&A meeting, and you will start receiving notices as of tomorrow, and we'll let you know if there's anything else that Marty wants to announce for that meeting. And also, please make sure his email will be attached to the notices so you can send them ahead of time, any questions that you might have, and we'll guarantee that those will be answered sometime during the meeting. The meeting after that will be on the iPhone, the iPad, and the watch. It'll also be a Q&A meeting with Mitch Byers. Okay. A couple words about the survey. We really appreciate it if you would fill out the survey. We're doing this because we really appreciate your thoughts. We put a lot of effort into our meetings on a weekly basis. We're one of the few Mac user groups in the world that has more than one meeting a month. We have about 45 meetings a year. We take off in July and August. And even this year, we had meetings in July and August, and we probably will do some next year. But we really appreciate your continuing to follow up on that survey, fill it out, and let us know if you have any ideas or whatever. We take a look at every survey, and we really appreciate your comments. Today's meeting, we have the famous Jeff Carlson. I've sent out a notice about the meeting probably 4 or 5 times, so everybody's aware of who Jeff is. And so, Jeff, I'd like to welcome you, and you can talk a little bit about yourself, possibly, on the front end. Thank you. Welcome.
Great. Well, thanks for having me here. Let's see about me. I am a photographer. I'm a longtime writer. You've probably known me from, I started doing tidbits ages ago. I've been a columnist for the Seattle Times. I write lots and lots of books. In fact, this week, coming out with an upgraded version of my Take Control of Apple Watch book. Just basically like a freelance writer. I've been covering the Mac space for a long time. Apple technology and all that. And then many years ago, I decided that I would get a hobby, and that hobby was photography, because I went to South Africa with my wife. And, at that point, I had only taken a few, I had a little point and shoot camera, and I thought, okay, I'm going to South Africa. I'm going to actually go on safari. So I should get like some sort of decent camera. So I got like this super zoom camera. And totally got the bug to start doing photography. And my wife was like thrilled, because that meant that I then had a hobby. And very soon after, my publishers at Peach Pit Press, my editor was like, hey, you take pretty okay pictures, and we know you can write. Do you want to do a book about photography? So of course I said yes. And then since then, I've written a lot about photography and like iPads and photography. So that's my extremely condensed history of photography. But what's interesting, sort of more applicable here, is just following the whole digital photography world and post-processing, and how at one point, if you were using Photoshop or Lightroom or Aperture back in the day, some people are still using Aperture, that kind of meant that you were serious about it, right? Like you were willing to put in the time, put in the effort to go and just work on your photos. Well, then came smartphones, then came cameras and the iPhone, and basically everybody now is a photographer in some way. And that can be, you can be totally casual as a photographer. You can be, someone who just takes snaps. You could be more deliberate about it. You could be one of these crazy people like I am occasionally, which is getting up at, 4 o'clock in the morning and driving somewhere to shoot a sunset. And maybe there's a sunset there, maybe it's not, but sorry, sunrise. Uh, I should point out it is very early here in Seattle, and even though I'm talking about getting up early, I'm a freelance writer, so sometimes early is a relative term. Anyway, so there are different levels of engagement with photography, and there's also different levels of engagement with editing your photos. And so what I'm going to talk about today is this app called Luminar 4. And one reason that I became interested in Luminar, in addition to the fact that I've written about lots of different post processors and, from iPhoto to Photos to Lightroom, one interesting thing about this whole sphere is it's moved from catering to those professionals who need like the latest and greatest and the most precise editing tools, to people who they just want to make their picture better. And some of that can happen in, like, say, the iPhone's camera. The iPhone cameras do an amazing job of sort of doing a lot of the things that you would have to spend a lot of time in Photoshop doing. But there's also, like, you went out and you saw a nice sunrise or a nice sunset, and you want to make it a little bit better, or that it needs to be brighter, or maybe you took a picture of somebody and their face is a little bit in shadow, and you think, I could do something with this if I knew how. And then, and I don't know how many of you have had this experience, but there's that wall that kind of comes down, and you're like, oh, okay, well, if I really want to do this, and I really want to do it right, because these are the pictures that I've taken, this is, I'm have a sense of craft and quality in my work. Oh, well, I got to learn Photoshop. And that phrase right there, I got to learn Photoshop, is like such a big, packed, loaded phrase, because Photoshop is so huge. It can do so much. Like, you can have fantastic results from Photoshop, but you really got to put in the work, right? And so I think for a lot of people, you get to that point and you're like, well, maybe I don't really need to work on this photo. Maybe it's okay as it is. Maybe I can just open it in Photos and click auto and stick with that. And, it's maybe partially where you want it to be, but you're kind of held back by all of that expectation of, oh man, if I want to do this right, I got to really learn it, but I don't have the time to really learn it, or I don't have the gear or whatever. So this is where something like Luminar comes in. Luminar has a lot of those like really deep controls, but they're also the Skylum, the company that makes it. They've also been very deliberate about let's put in some things that will appeal to everybody. And I'll talk a little bit at the end. They've just announced a new product called Luminar Ai that kind of takes that into another realm. And that's something like, they've only announced it. They've started pre-orders for it, but they haven't actually shown it. So you know how software companies are. But with Luminar, they've incorporated a lot of artificial intelligence that really speeds things up or helps you out, even if you're that person who says, I know that I need to do something with this photo, I'm not exactly sure what, and I don't really want to spend 4 hours twiddling with levers and trying to figure out how to do it just to make my picture better. So what I'm going to show today are a few different things. I'm going to real briefly show how to get into Luminar. I'm going to show how you can actually use Luminar as a plugin for other apps. So if you already have your whole photo library in Lightroom Classic or the Photos app, that's okay. You can still use Luminar to edit and not have to deal with you know, oh geez, I need to save this file to my desktop. Wait, did it go to the desktop? Is it in the pictures folder, which is the edited version, which kind of used to be the case actually not too long ago. And then I'll just do some walkthroughs of some of the things that it can do. I think that the way we will do this in terms of questions, absolutely ask questions, but I may like take the question sort of after every image, and we'll see how that works out. And you know, of course, if somebody says, "I can't believe you did that. What are you talking about?" You know, jump in and say, "Jeff, we're sorry. We gotta take you out of here." So let me switch over to Luminar. You can kind of see what it looks like. Okay. And then one sort of technical issue with Zoom. Zoom wants to put the thumbnails of me and the other presenters over on the right-hand side of the screen. That's what I see here, which is perfect for covering up all of Luminar's controls. So if you are seeing that little floating thumbnail of presenters, you should be able to just drag that out of the way, or move it down to the bottom of the screen. Okay, so Luminar, basically, this is a photo editor. It's has a little bit of a catalog manager to it, but I wouldn't go so far as to say it would be something that would replace Photos or even Lightroom. It has a nice way of just having your photos collected in one place in what's called the library. I'm going to go to this grid mode, so you can see, you know, where your photos are. You can you know, specify different folders that are on your hard drive. What's kind of nice about Luminar, if you have a bunch of photos, let's say on a network volume, you have a network attached storage, you can just add that folder here, and it's smart enough about reading that. You know, you can store your photos in Dropbox, and Luminar will grab it because it's just pulling things off the Finder. Unlike, say, the Photos app, where you know Apple kind of builds its own box for all the photos, and it's in this package file. And if you are brave or foolhardy, you can go and spelunk that package and you know, try to find the original images. But you know, Photos does its own housekeeping, and all right, Apple, whatever you want to do, that's fine. So let me just really quickly, I'm going to also jump to, if I can, I'm going to go to Photos. Where are your photos? See it. How this works. Okay, so here's an image in the Photos app, and I want to edit this. If I want, I can click the edit button, and here's all of Photos controls. I will say people ding Photos for not really being very sophisticated. Actually, it's not that bad. It just doesn't, like, it's very much designed as a tool for someone who doesn't necessarily know about all this, and that's okay. But you know, if I wanted to, I could click the magic wand and see what this picture does. It's okay. But what I can also do is this button up here in the top right, the extensions button. I can click that and open Luminar. And what's interesting about Photos and its extension, is it actually, there we go. The way Photos extensions works, it's basically sort of loading a version of Luminar in the Photos window. So here I have, like I'm still in the Photos app, but I have the controls that that Luminar is offering me. And so, you know, I can do some real very, very quick edits. And then when I click Save Changes, that edited version goes back to photos. And I can click done. And that way the photo, it's still in my library. I don't have to worry about file management and all of that. So that's just a real quick peek into how you can, like how you can make Luminar work in something that you already have set up, because it's not really expected that you're going to take 10 years of your photos library and migrate that over to Luminar, just because Luminar's library is very basic. So,
Jeff, will you take a question?
Absolutely.
When you save the changes to that photo, did it change the original photo, or did it make a copy of the original with the changes?
That is an excellent question. Luminar is non-destructive, so the original photo is always available. What the Photos extension does is it kind of makes like an internal copy. So if I wanted to, I can click up here, go back to edit. There's a button at the top that says revert to original. And the way Photos works is you can always revert to the original. Now, I can't say, the sky adjustment that I made, I don't really like that, but I like the first adjustment that I made in Luminar. Like, you don't have that granularity when you're working with Photos extensions. You either have like, here's the edited version, or I can edit it again and start over from scratch. So if I click revert to original, it just brings back the one that was there in the first place.
Okay. So I in essence have two, or I have one with a layer?
You have, you secretly have two, but you only see one because Photos is, of course, trying to be as friendly as possible.
Yes.
And not exposing layers or multiple copies. Just, that's just the way Photos works.
Yes, trying not to confuse you. Okay. Yeah. All right. We have another question. Would you like that?
Yeah.
All right. Marty, unmute your mic and ask your question, please.
Jeff, is the functionality of the extension the same as the functionality of the external program?
Yes. Yeah, it's you get all the controls. You can do layers and masking and all of that as an extension. So you're basically getting Luminar, but you're doing it with a Photos wrapper so that you can round trip from Photos to Luminar and keep everything in Photos. And what's also nice is, one of the great reasons for using Photos is to have your Photos library available on all your devices, right? So you can go to your iPad and edit or whatever. So when I have this edited version that I've edited in Luminar and I've come back to Photos, that edited version is what gets sent up to iCloud. So then when I look at my Photos library on my iPad, I see the edited version. But I can always revert to the original on any of my devices. But, I wouldn't be able to like go back into Luminar and re-edit that in the way that you could, as I'll show you, when we actually sort of use Luminar as its own standalone thing.
Okay.
Thanks.
All right. Rick Matheson, can you unmute yourself and ask your question, please?
Yes, Jeff, does that mean if you're using the extension version to edit from Photos that you don't have a history like you would in Lightroom or Photoshop?
Yes, that's exactly what it means. According to Photos, the history is you edited something and then before that you didn't edit. There are some apps that take advantage of being able to preserve that history. Luminar is not one of those. I believe I would have to triple check this, but the last I looked, which was when my book came out earlier this year, that was still the case. So like there is a way to do it. There's a program called Raw Power that's really good, and it has that ability to go back in and say, oh, you know what, like I totally set my color saturation wrong, but I want all the editing capabilities of raw power. I just want to pull back on the saturation, and you can do that with an extension. With Luminar, and I think also with Lightroom, you're basically saying, here's my edited version. I don't really like my edited version, so I'm going to revert to the original and then go try again. So that's kind of the plug-in trade-off there.
So in Lightroom, then you can step partway back past a particular edit that you don't like and continue from there. You can't do that with Luminar at all.
You can't do that when you're using Luminar as a plugin. So if I were to take this picture and I use the plugin, I edit it in Luminar, and let's say I make it black and white, and then I save my changes, I come back to Photos, and then I look at it again in Photos, and I think, I like the black and white, but I wish I had more contrast, or I want to take advantage of some of Luminar's features, like replacing the sky. Then if I were to then use the plugin to edit it again, I'm editing like an edit on top of an edit. So I wouldn't be able to just go in and just turn off the black and white and turn on the sky replacement.
Thank you. Thank you.
All right.
You
All
bet.
right. One last question before you get started. Again, Muffy Clark.
Sounds great.
Muffy, please unmute yourself and ask your question.
Okay, yeah, my question is, I've been using Photoshop for years and I have not upgraded because I don't want to pay for the Photoshop program, but the main tool I use the most in Photoshop is that perspective cropping tool. Now, does
Yes.
Luminar offer that?
Not in the same way. So if you're like straightening things, like accounting for lens distortion, or if you're doing like real estate photography, that comes in a lot, where you want to make sure that all your vertical lines are straight.
I'm cropping artwork. That's my main thing.
Okay. Yeah. Luminar has some fairly limited tools like that, but but Lightroom or Photoshop still has the better option for that kind of distortion, other than cropping or rotating. Like it can absolutely do that, but it's not as strong when it comes to distorting it in an angular way in order to make something more lined up with what you're looking at.
Yeah, because that's really crucial to me.
Yeah. Well, it's also one of those things where, so Luminar can be a plugin for Photoshop too. So what you could do is you can, when you're in Photoshop, do that sort of geometric edit, and then hand it off to Luminar to do your tone or your color shifts if you wanted to do that. So it's flexible enough to handle some of those things, but it's also very much geared toward photographers who are sort of doing like more tonal color layer based types of things. Make sense?
Okay, thank you.
Oh, thanks for the questions.
Okay. All yours, Jeff.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to jump back into Luminar. And let's see. So I mentioned AI, and AI is kind of a funny thing when it comes to photography right now, because you're going to hear it everywhere. And Apple talks about its machine learning quite a bit, and it's gotten to that point where it's like, oh, it's got AI. What does that mean? I don't know. It's marketing, whatever. But Luminar was one of the first programs to really start embracing AI. And what that means is it's basically programs have had the ability to, like click an auto button and it just kind of magically makes everything better. And that's been really kind of hit or miss. It depends. Like Lightroom had an auto button that literally, like, you clicked it and you were like, okay, well, that's your interpretation, but it doesn't look anything like I want. And, like it was okay. And then a few years ago, Adobe really started pushing into using its Creative Cloud and AI and machine learning to basically look at a scene and do a better job of interpreting what that scene needs. So what Luminar does is it's doing some of that, and I'll show you that in a second. But the real power of AI in photo editing, especially, is to have the software recognize what you're working with. So, for example, it can say, "Oh, there's a face here, and so that must be a person." Well, if I'm going to, crank the contrast quite a lot in my image because I want the background to be really contrasty, or there's a setting called clarity in a lot of programs, and you turn clarity up, and you're like, oh, it's got that nice crunchy background effect. Well, you apply clarity to somebody's face, it's not pretty at all. And so what Luminar does, it says, oh, there's a person there, and you probably don't want to, make them look like they've, been outside for a million years. So we're just going to apply this to everything else except for that person's face. Or, Luminar can say, all right, I can tell that this looks like a horizon line. This is probably the sky area. This is probably something that is in the foreground. And so it's using AI, artificial intelligence, to kind of help you figure out what the image needs. It's doing a lot of the things that you would be doing anyway, because you would be saying, like, I already know that that's a sky because I have eyes and I was there and I took the picture. And of course, software doesn't know that automatically. And it's now much more possible, and there are lots of advances in this front for the software to really do a lot. So, for example, let's jump into examples because all I'm doing is talking and waving my hands. That's not fun. Here's a picture of a sunflower field that I took. And as you can tell, there are some things wrong with it right away. It's too dark. Like, that there are sunflowers there, but it doesn't really do anything for me. Now, I intentionally shot this dark because you can also see there in the background in the sky is pretty bright. And so I had to underexpose, otherwise I would just have this, this blown out white sky. But I was shooting in RAW, which helps in these cases. And I knew that, okay, software can help me out here. Now, I look at this and I say, okay, the sky needs to be a little bit darker. The foreground needs to be brighter. And if I were in Photoshop or Lightroom, I would start maybe making masks or making selections. Maybe add like a gradient to the sky, gradient fill. But instead, I'm going to do that crazy thing, which is let the computer do the work. Remember when we had this whole thought of computers can do a lot for us, and then we ended up doing it all for them? So what I'm going to do is I'm going to open up, make sure I've got my correct layer there, this AI Enhance panel over on the right. And AI Enhance, like, it is literally the just make my picture better. That's all I want. So with this, I've done nothing to this photo yet. And if I drag this AI accent slider up, we're going to go kind of extreme to like 85. And I hope everybody can see that well. I know Zoom calls are notorious for lag or pixelation, but hopefully you can see, like, I've dragged one slider and it basically did everything that I'm looking for. The foreground is a lot brighter. The yellows are popping. The sky is not completely blown out. And, this is something that I would actually say, hey, you know what? Um, I would post this on Instagram. I would send this to a friend. If I were to sort of approach this in a more traditional way, so let's turn this off, and I'll go to the light panel over here and say, okay, it's dark, so I need to increase the exposure. So if I increase the exposure, you can see the difference. The foreground is definitely better, but the sky is just gone. So then I would have to go and maybe make another layer, make a mask, fix it separately. Blah, I don't have time for that. So that is the power of AI accent. And that works on, pretty much everything, because the software has been fed, hundreds of thousands, millions of images. And so it can look at this and say, well, that's a sky, that's a foreground. The foreground looks dark, the sky looks bright, and it just magically does it. Now, you're not going to get these results all the time, but it's at the point where I will open pretty much any image in Luminar and just go to AI accent, see what it does, and use that as a building block. So there we go. That's it. It's easy. You do one slider, everything's better. The end, right? Well, no, because sometimes you want more control. Sometimes you have different ideas. And sometimes, you know what? You're like, I want to sit here and spend a weekend or a couple of hours or just some time like really finessing a program, finessing a photo. So let's take a look at this picture here. This is a shot up in Leavenworth, Washington. And again, I look at this and I can see the potential of what it needs. So by itself, this is a perfectly fine photo. I very intentionally shot this so that when this woman just walked into my frame, I like bent down and got her between me and the sun. And it was super bright. I actually couldn't even see the screen on my camera, but I knew there'd be something to work with. But it's a little dark in places. I don't have any color happening. And what I can do instead, let's see if sorry, I'm just moving Zoom's little thumbnail again. So it's kind of the next step up in editing in Luminar is to be able to apply preset looks. And a lot of times that's just, here's how to make something brighter. Here's how to fix something. Here's how to make your photo look just like your favorite Instagram influencer. So if I click the looks panel up here, and one thing that I point out in my book, I've never been a fan as much of presets and looks, only because, like I want to edit things the way I want to edit them. I don't necessarily want my photo to look like somebody else's. And then I realized that looks and presets aren't necessarily just like a shortcut. It's like more of a recipe. And once I make some edits and then I could save that as my own look, then I can have all those ingredients together mixed in a certain way for later. So if you buy this book, there's a link that will let you download a special set of Rocky Nook looks. Rocky Nook is the publisher. We made some looks that you can apply. And like, for example, like here's a black and white film look. And one of them is one that I built from this image called Leavenworth Fall. So this is the edited version of this image. It's got much more color. The foreground has been brightened, but it's not too bright. You see more color in the reflections, and it's quite a difference and more of what I had in mind. Now I can in Luminar, I can sort of do a before and after. If the Zoom's little panel will go away, so I can get to it. So here's the before, here's the after, and you can do like a little split screen so you can see, ooh, all right, this is how things are changed. And what I've done is if you look over here in my editing area, you can see that some of these tools are more bold than the others. And that just means that these are tools that have been, that are in use. And so with some presets, it basically kind of makes an adjustment and then there you go, boom, and you're kind of stuck with it. With Luminar, this is basically says, okay, well, we're going to apply all these settings and we're going to, you know, make it possible for me to go and re-edit anything that I want. So in this case, let's look at the colors in the background. Like the color was there. I haven't gone and painted any color, but it didn't really come through in the original. So what I did was I opened up the color panel. I went into advanced settings where you can edit individual colors. And then I clicked like the orange. And so if I'm just editing the orange values in this image, then what I did was I changed the hue, I changed the luminance. So I'll kind of move this, try not to go too fast so it doesn't get blurry. Maybe the yellows and the saturation. And so by digging into some of these kind of edits, I can make, I can start with my look and then go and tweak the individual components. Now this is, you know, like I've done a little bit of AI enhance to this, but again, like I wanted to really make those colors pop because that was kind of part of the point of it. Now, hopefully you can also see, because now I've jumped into the world of sliders and this is kind of the opposite of, hey, just do one slider and make everything better. And that's kind of the beauty of Luminar, is that yes, you absolutely have the surface level of, if you don't want to dig into all of this, you just want to make your photos better, you can use AI enhance and there you go. But it's also powerful enough that you can do, you know, these kinds of really micro adjustments to say, you know, like the yellows really need to be more saturated, but I don't want it to pollute, say, the reds. Then I can mix with that. There are also a ton of tools that are really geared for specific photographic situations. So like this landscape enhancer. I've added what's called this golden hour slider. You're not going to have a golden hour slider in Photoshop because like it doesn't really mean anything. But to a photographer, a golden hour, like that's that time when the sun is low in the sky and everything's kind of more golden. And so if I turn this down, like this is still a perfectly good photo, but golden hour kind of adds that little extra bit of color without polluting the entire image with color. Or foliage enhancer. I can say, you know what, I kind of want my greens to be a little more prominent. And yes, I could go into color and I could just adjust the green sections. But, you know, why make things harder on myself unless I know really precisely what I want to do? Like in this case, I really wanted the oranges and I really wanted the yellows and the reds to come out. So that's like a quick look into using looks and how you can dig in on some of these other features. Do we have any questions before I jump to the next little bit?
Someone wants to know, do you know if you can use Luminar with Photoshop CS5?
Ooh, that is a very good question. My top of the mind guess would be probably because I think Photoshop's plugin architecture has been fairly stable for years, and jump in if I'm correct. I haven't used an older version of Photoshop in a long time.
Yeah, that's sort of old. Yeah.
I think that there's a fairly good chance. How about that? There's a fairly good chance that it'll work.
I would recommend that that person also look on the Luminar website to see if they can tell you what versions of Photoshop will be
Definitely.
compatible with this plugin. Okay. Alan Weinstein, can you please ask your question?
Yes, now that you have this new look, can you replace the old look with this one, or can you add another look, say, whatever you call this one, -1 or something like that? So how do I preserve this new look? Either replace the old look with this one or make a completely new look?
Yeah, you can absolutely create a new look. So I'm just going to apply a black and white conversion just so that we can, make it really different. And if I go up to my looks menu here, I can just say save new look and then call it, Leavenworth BW, and click save. And then that would show up in my user looks.
Now, what if you want to just replace the old one with this new one, not add another one, but replace the old one?
That is a very good question. Offhand, I don't know if you could just replace it. Well, my gosh, Jeff, we have the capability to test this out. All right, so I'm going to save new look, and we're just going to call this one Leavenworth BW. The name is already taken. So the answer is you can't do that in this interface, but what's nice about the looks are, if I go up into the file menu, say show Luminar looks folder, all of these things are just little files. So if, for example, I have my Leavenworth fall look, and it's not working for me anymore. There's something about it that I want to change. I'm never going to use this again. I can make like Leavenworth Fall 2, go to my looks folder and just delete that file and then have the other one in its place. So it's a little more, hands-on, but you can do it, just not in that nice, clean, hey, Luminar, will you please replace this for me?
Okay. Scott Silver, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Jeff, could you please demonstrate the AI sky enhancer slider?
Oh, yes. Yes, that is coming right up. All right. Well, let's jump right to that, and we can tackle another question if we need to. I'm going to go back here. So here is, actually, this is not as good an example of the AI sky. So let me, of course, the ones that I have here are not as interesting. 1 second. So what AI Sky is going to do is kind of make everything better in a way. Let's see. It's funny, I don't have a. All right, so here's this image, and I'm going to just revert to the original. Okay. This will kind of give you a little bit of an idea. If I go to AI Enhance, let's go AI Accent. And what it's doing is it's kind of doing everything that I want. It's bringing the greens up a bit. I shot this from a helicopter, so I think it's a little crooked, but we're not going to worry about that right now. Of course, Luminar has cropping tools and rotating and all of that. But we kind of want a little more definition up here. So if I drag the AI Sky Enhancer, it is doing just that. And if you'll notice, so what we've done is we've added some contrast to the sky. It's darkened it a little bit. And again, what I've done here is just kind of a real rough punch at it. But if you look at the bottom, if you look at the sort of foreground area, this area down here, that's not changing. So I can crank this far beyond what I think is actually a good image. You know, this is too dark, too blue for me, but nothing in the foreground has changed. Now that alone, if you were to do that just in Photoshop by itself, you would have to first mask out this area. You would have to, you know, maybe make a graduated fill up here that would apply just to the sky, and then maybe you'd have to erase the mask around here. It makes me tired just even contemplating it. So that's a good example of the sky. But let me show you something else in the sky. Let's say we've got this image here, and this, you know, again, perfectly fine image. It was a lovely, lovely day, and the sky just didn't do anything. Like, this is near sunset. You can see the sun over here, and you know, the sky was clear. And for photographers, you know, a clear blue sky is boring. So I'm going to go into these creative edits, and I'm just going to replace the sky. So this AI sky replacement. Now, this is kind of controversial. Some people are like, well, that's not the sky that was there, and you got to document the real conditions. Yes, you can do that. Or, you know, photography is art. So I want this picture, and I want something just a little bit more interesting. So for example, I can say, I want, let's see, like, just give me a blue sky, right? So this still looks like a sky that could have been there. You know, I'm not turning it, I don't have, like, you know, rockets and planets and stuff out there, although I could do that, strangely enough. But what I want to draw your attention to is this lighthouse here. Now, to do a sky replacement, traditionally, you would have to make masks. You would have to make selections. You'd have to make sure that all this area around here and around the lighthouse and the rocks, you'd have to make sure that that was all nicely, cleanly selected, so that you didn't have stuff coming through. Well, here, like, even up here at the top of the lighthouse, where you have, you know, it's glass up there, the sky is showing through, you've got some you know, some structural things on the glass that would be occluded. Like, the software has figured out, oh, this looks like it's probably a window or glass or something, and so we're going to let that show through. If I want to do something really dramatic, did a fairly good job. Let's see if I can do like something more like that. Of course, I show those two things, and it's like, it's not doing that great of a job. So let me show you something that that is actually not bad at all.
You could actually see it figuring out the glass while you were doing that process.
Yes. Yes. Yeah. So let me go to a more dramatic version, and this is the kind of thing, you know, when a new feature like this comes out, you kind of want to throw something hard at it just to see what it does. And so we have this picture here. Again, kind of boring sky, but there are a lot of challenges here because we've got this pergola that's basically in the foreground, but it's occupying the sky area. And you've got this tree, and I actually took this photo a few years ago, and I tried to manually replace the sky. It was a lot of work, a lot of selections and what have you. So let's see what Luminar is going to do with that. We're going to add an image of my own. So what you're looking at here is basically like it has figured all of that out. I haven't made any selections. I haven't done anything really other than say, please put this, this sky here. And even, if I zoom in, the tree, it's not, what you'll get with tree branches oftentimes will be kind of like this halo of where it couldn't figure out where to work. And then don't really have time to like show these sort of more advanced tools here, but one problem that this can have, like there's a little bit of bleed over here, where maybe the AI hasn't quite figured out, like maybe that's part of the sky, and so you can do things like closing gaps and changing the sky global and sky local, and what that basically does is it tells it to kind of recompute and look at a finer level. But I also wanted to point out there's this relight scene slider. If I click relight scene, obviously when I took the photo, the sky was not purple and yellow. And what this will do is it'll actually apply a lot of those colors from the sky to the rest of the image to make it blend in more. Let's see, I think here, this is like the final edited version once I had finished it. And again, this is something that's enabled by AI. If you do real estate photography, or you're in a position where you just want to make a better sky, make something more interesting, it's something that can be done really easily and really quickly. Now, I will say, not to harp too much on sky replacement, but if you know this place, this is in the San Juan Islands, the sun technically doesn't set over there. So you have to make sure that you're using a background that kind of matches the sky. The last thing you want to do is have like a big sunset coming down here and it's all super dramatic and all the shadows coming from the other direction. But these are tools, and we learn how to use them. Okay, I have basically one more technique to show. I'm going to edit a portrait and then a couple of examples of what we can do. So do we have any questions before we jump to that?
Alan, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
That purple sky, was that a preset that you put in, or was that something that came with Luminar? I mean, there must be lots of different sky backgrounds. Did Luminar give you a bunch that they had, or did you actually make that one?
So this one right here is a photo that I took, and if I go back here, so when I'm looking at the menu here of images, all the ones here at the top, these are photos that I've taken, and basically it's just saying there's an option at the bottom that says choose a file. If I wanted to, I could choose a picture of cats, and you'd have cats floating in the sky. So it'll apply any image that you want, but all of the items down here below, those are ones that Luminar supplies. So let's see if we put this one in. Hey, look, it's suddenly beautiful sky scene, and you can see over here on the left where it's bled a little bit into this area. There's a section here at the top where it's a little more pronounced here, where the mask just didn't take, and so that's where I would want to, if I change the sky global, you can see that got filled in at the top. And if I sort of close gaps, there's a little bit of a dance, but I just actually fixed those two things by dragging 3 sliders in 5 seconds, 10 seconds.
Okay, Roger, can you unmute yourself and ask your question?
Yeah, Jeff, this picture is a great picture. And then pardon me, in the Midwest, they have a tendency to run all their power lines overhead.
Oh yeah.
There'd be lines in this. How would you eliminate those power lines or those electrical lines?
So as part of Luminar's tools, so we have like the stuff that I've shown so far, and most of the tools apply to the entire image. But there is also over here, you have an erase tool and a clone and stamp tool, and so you can basically use the erase tool, drag over the those wires, and it will smartly make a fix. In fact, let me show you one example. So here's a picture of my daughter, and in the original, come back. Oh, I accidentally loaded the edited version. In the original, there's basically like a brown leaf that was up like on her head, and you know, if I wanted to clone that out, that would be kind of a difficult prospect, because you have all this texture, you have, you know, the little beads of snow, excuse me, and I literally took the erase tool, I went blop, and it was gone. I didn't have to do any other fixes beyond that. Don't know how I ended up with the edited version there, but oh well. So yeah, it does have tools like that. I will say, in general, they're not as good as Photoshop. Photoshop is still the leader when it comes to, you know, doing smart erasing and content-aware fill and all of that. But you know, especially for things like getting rid of power lines, you know, getting rid of like an odd bit of trash on the grass or something like that, it absolutely works.
All right, one more question. Scott, can you unmute yourself and ask a question, please?
Jeff, can you demonstrate that in the image you have of the person standing on the rocks in the water, and remove that person?
Ooh, a challenge. Yes. My suspicion is, because this is so prominent, it probably will not work as well. But hey, let's just see what Luminar can do with it. So I open this. All right. Sorry, my friend. Of course, I didn't make this a little bigger. All right. Because I am Thomas Kincaid, and I do not want any people in any of my artworks. All right, so now I'm going to say erase. Let's just see. My suspicion is it's going to be kind of junky. It's kind of junky, but it's also not terrible. I mean, obviously, this isn't something that I would share with anybody, but, and again, I think it's because it was so prominent. But if I undo that and
You still have the reflection.
let's say, you know, instead I want it to, like there's some people back here. Like, I don't want other people. Get out of here. You know, or I don't like rocks. Get rid of those rocks over there. Then what it will do is think about it and do a pretty good job of getting rid of it. So, you know, great for getting rid of power lines, and, you know, every once in a while you take a picture and there's like a branch that's sticking out from one side, you know, and you're like, oh, everything was great except the wind blew that thing into phrase, or into position. Then, you know, you can absolutely fix like that.
Thank you.
Yeah. All right,
Okay.
Scott. Jeff, you have 10 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Let's talk about portraits, because you say portrait editing, and sometimes it can be really daunting, because like true portrait retouching it's a lot of work. It's a very specialized skill. But we're taking pictures of people all the time. So what can we do to make portrait editing easier? Now, again, if you're in Photoshop, there are all sorts of things that you can do that are very complicated and very time consuming. But hey, we've got AI working for us, right? So in this picture, like right away, I can see things are a little bit too dark. So I'm just going to use AI accent and fix that a little bit. Actually, going back to the erase tool, this is a thing where, every once in a while you get like there's a little smudge back here. So that would be like a perfect example of using the erase tool to just get rid of like dust spots or like there was something on my backdrop that I didn't realize at the time. Okay, so this is an interesting picture of a friend of mine. I did his portrait, and but we want to make things just a little bit better, right? One of the dangers of portrait editing is there are lots of tools that will like smooth skin and well, the idea is well, you're just going to touch them up. You're going to make them look better. And the reality is you end up with just this sort of like fuzzy mess. And what I like about Luminar's approach is it does have tools. You can smooth the skin, you can do different things, but it's not going to go overboard. Everything still looks realistic. So for example, you go to AI Skin Enhancer, because like he has wrinkles, but wrinkles are as much character. And so if I just drag this AI Skin Enhancer, and I'm just going to drag the amount up. All right, actually, we're going to go like really high. Now, hopefully you can see the detail coming through on the streaming feed. But what we've done here is like he still has wrinkles. He's still human, but it's just a little bit more pleasing for something like this, where you like this is kind of a formal portrait. You want to put a slight gloss onto it without being ridiculous. I'm going to go to if I do before and after. So here's before. This is actually before any of the light was added, and here's after. And also pay attention to like his beard. Facial hair, it can just be a nightmare for some of these skin enhancers, because like, oh well, you don't really have a beard, you just have this like fuzzy mess. Well, the AI Skin Enhancer has kept that. Now, part of what's going on here is the AI sees that there's a person, sees there's a head, but if it can understand that there is a face there, it can understand different parts of the face. So if I go here to AI Portrait Enhancer, I have all sorts of things like his eyes. His eyes are fine here. And of course, when we look at portraits, we tend to look right at the eyes. And so if I drag this eye enhancer, what I'm doing is, I'm not sure if it's coming through as well, just it knows where his eyes are, it knows where his pupils are, and so it's brightening just that area. It's adding just a little bit of contrast right there. And again, I didn't have to make a mask. I didn't have to go in and make a circular fill, a gradient, and all of that kind of stuff. This dark circles remover, again, like it's adding a little bit of it's taking some of the shadow away from underneath his eyes, because of course we all have that, but not to the point where suddenly he's glowing like a deer in headlights. And then it has other things like improve eyebrows. Like if somebody has kind of faint eyebrows, that'll give it a little bit more definition. Lips, we can make his lips like a little more saturated. They seem a little bit pale, so maybe we'll make them a little bit darker. And again, like these are things that are just normally you'd have to go and make masks or use a brush, but because the AI knows what's going on, it knows what it's looking at, it can just target those adjustments just with the slider. And the thing that I use almost all the time when I do a portrait enhance is face light, because invariably somebody's face is just a little bit too dark. So if I bring up face light, like I'm adding illumination just to the face. I'm not blowing out the background. And this also works in photos, like if you have 3 or 4 people, it knows, oh, there's 3 or 4 people there. So I will just brighten up just the faces, which is really, really nice. There's also this slim face, which, like, okay, we're not trying to do magazine retouching. And at first, like I really kind of, I don't know, balked at this, because I'm like, like I hate that retouching where you're like, oh, that person's not skinny enough, so we're just gonna like make things unrealistic. And then I realized that where this really works is not so much like make somebody look not as full in their face, but if you, like, say you shot somebody with a very wide angle lens, and so you have like some of that distortion, this will compensate for some of that. Yes, so that is a very quick portrait enhancement. If we do a before and after, here's the raw file as it started. Here's what it looks like, and we spent what, 3 minutes, 4 minutes on it. And if I wanted to, I could then also go into the different, light and structure and all of those controls and build upon that. And again, and you don't really have time to go into this, but if you want to geek out and be, really photo editing master, Luminar does have layers. You can make masks. In fact, you can make a mask for every single tool if you want. It can get really kind of crazy complicated, and I explain in my book how to manage that. But if you want to go crazy, you can absolutely go crazy. But like for one example, if we take a look at this. One of the things that I like to do again is like take a photo that has problems, right? This one I think turned out pretty good. This is the after, and hopefully you'll be surprised and go ooh ah when I show you the before, because this is where it started. And
ooh, ah.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is something where if I didn't know that Luminar could do what it could do, I would, run past this in my library and go, oh, it's way too dark. I can't do anything with this. Now, this took a bit more work, as you can see when we're looking at layers here. There's a clone and stamp layer. There's an adjustment layer with masks. There's portrait tools. There's a background replacement, sky replacement. So you can definitely put in the work if you want. There's also like this picture here. When I look at the original, as soon as it loads, here we go. If I look at the original, come back, like, I knew what I was going for. And so once I made the adjustments to bring up the tonal values and sort of get to a good baseline there, then I specifically made this new adjustment layer so that I could make a mask just on the whiskey portion of it and just give that a little more drama, a little more pop.
Oh, it's really nice. It's really nice. We have one last question?
Absolutely.
Alan, ask your
Okay,
question.
in that picture of the man, the one in the middle now, the right-hand side is very much more brighter than the left-hand side. It's like the light is coming from the right-hand side. Is there a way to brighten up the left-hand side or balance the two sides so it looks like the light is more coming from the front rather than from the side?
Yeah, there are a couple of different ways you could do that. So one would be, if I go into light, like let's just see what happens if I bring up the shadows, like just shadows by itself. Like that's not bad. You know, it's kind of added more to here, but it's not bad. If I really wanted to try to make this like really more balanced, what I would do is I would go to my layers. I would make a new adjustment layer, and basically what this is doing is like only adjustments are here. It's not making like a full pixel for pixel copy of the image. And so then I can say, all right, for just this, I'm going to bring up the exposure. And of course, now, you know, my photo brain is like, no, it's too bright, it's terrible, blah. But calm down, Mr. Carlson. I can say edit mask, bring your brush in here, and say, all right, we just want this portion of him to be brighter. So this adjustment that I made on this layer, I just want it to apply right here. And of course, you know, I'm doing this quickly because that is the rule of presenting photos. You only do the quick stuff and presume that you'll do a better job later. Okay, that looks terrible, but you get the idea.
We get the idea.
Yeah.
Okay, it is 12:46, and if you have any closing words, Jeff?
No, that's it. I think if you, from the pure, I got to get him off the screen. I'm sorry. Sorry, Rob. If you go to jeffcarlson.com/Luminar-links, I provided links where you can order Luminar, you can pre-order Luminar AI, and you can order my book, of course. And the book, if you use the code Carlson40 and you buy it from Rocky Nook, my publisher, you get 40% off. So that's better than Amazon. And you can get a print version or an ebook, or a print and ebook version.
I have that information, right, Jeff?
Excellent, thank you.
Okay.
And of course, if you go to jeffcarlson.com, I've done a couple of other webinars with Rocky Nook, one on editing black and white photos in Luminar. And then I also did another one that was just about layers and masks and kind of digging into a lot of that.
All right, thank you very much, Jeff.
Jeff,
Thank you very much.
very much. Thank you. Excellent presentation. And I have the links and so forth, so I'll make sure when I send out the video and so forth that those are also part of that email. Thank you very much again, Jeff. Outstanding meeting. Please, we just want to remind you again to try to fill out that survey and give us any ideas that you do have. And thanks all for attending the meeting. And we'll see you next week with Marty Dorio.